Moin Moin und willkommen zurück zu einem weiteren React-Video auf unserem Kanal. Heute mit dem Video The City Animal Tier List vom Kanal Tier Zoo. Grüße gehen raus. Und ja, wir schnacken gar nicht mal viel. Ich zähle runter. Du hast auf, ne?
Jawohl.
Und wenn ich Go sage, dann starte ich das Video mit was gleichzeitig angucken. 3, 2, 1, Go.
This video is sponsored by CuriosityStream.
Ich war schon immer neugierig, was das interessanteste, beste Tier ist in der Stadt.
Ah geil, das ist ja wirklich wie so ein Spiel aufgebaut. Level 4. Achso, ich muss die Untertitel anmachen, Entschuldigung.
One of the newest biome types introduced to the game is the city biome. This is a completely unique biome type that's almost entirely constructed by human
Okay, das Video hat keine Untertitel.
However, this video isn't about those human players, nor is it about the players they deliberately add to their party, like cats and dogs, but rather all the other builds in the game, and which ones function the best in the city meta. While obviously not all cities are the same, there are certain strategies that tend to make for a viable city build. We'll first discuss the most and least relevant abilities for city meta builds, and then go through the tier list for the city meta. The most important objective of playing in a city biome is avoiding direct contact with humans. While there are ways to defeat humans, doing battle with them on their home turf is nearly impossible.
Aha, ja, so dafür kann man blöd werden. Ach du Schande!
Or come off as intimidating to humans are going to be at the highest risk of doing that. So what types of builds tend to struggle in cities? The resounding answer seems to be tank builds. While tanks tend to be the most outright powerful builds in a given server, city biome does not favor slow-moving herbivores that require huge amounts of food and have to spend most of the day grazing.
Der Damage
In
Dealer!
addition to attracting a ton of attention, the city meta is fast-moving and full of unorthodox barriers that slow, large,
Aber
defense-based
Überlebenskraft ist doch auch
have
wichtig.
trouble
Kleine Tiere
overcoming.
überleben doch viel besser
Builds
eigentlich.
that have controlling large territories as part of their main questline will also have a lot of difficulty.
Wie geil der das moderiert, das ist ja der Hammer.
Cities are tightly
Das macht
packed
cool, ja.
because the potential loot is so good. If all that you're after is the XP-rich food, great. But if you're after the territory itself, few challenges are more difficult or deadly than trying to conquer a human player's territory. So what does work in cities? Probably the most common trait among successful city builds is omnivory. That's because omnivory is key to making sure the supremely valuable loot available in cities is something your character can actually make use of. This isn't to say that you can't succeed as a pure carnivore.
Ja, da müssten
Obviously,
Tauben
the
ja
crowded
relativ.
nature of cities means there's
Gibt's
a lot of
Tauben in
potential
Amerika oder haben die andere, weißt du das?
But there's no question that
Natürlich.
scavengers
Ja, habt ihr das andere Tauben als hier in Europa? Ich glaube nicht, ne?
Die sind vielleicht ein bisschen anders von der Gattung her, aber im Grunde das gleiche.
Normally, I tell players who swap to a nocturnal playstyle to avoid dealing with the diurnal player base to get good. But honestly, when it comes to humans, I think it's a fair strategy. As I said before, city biomes present some of the most challenging terrain to navigate in the entire game, and so having high mobility and a versatile array of movement options is essential to traversing
Ja, das ist ein Stern, den musst du holen. Das hast du
Don't
nicht
spec
100,
into
alle
a high top
120.
speed if it means giving up the ability to
Guck mal
climb,
nach,
high
wie
jump,
das
crawl,
ist
or
die-
swim. Because cities will test your ability to do all of these frequently.
Ja, du musst schon.
Perhaps one of the most powerful city abilities is flight, because it
Definitiv.
not only lets you bypass just about any obstacle, but also is by far the best way to avoid or escape contact with dangerous humans. The most common obstacles you'll be able to interact with in cities are power lines, which can be scaled if you have the climb ability, but tend to be best utilized by aerial builds
Stimmt, die
as
berühren den
high
Boden ja
visibility,
nicht.
low-risk perch spots.
Ja.
Sewers, which can be accessed with the crawl ability,
Ach,
and
oh,
is a
niedlich.
safe shortcut to multiple points in a city.
Shortcut.
Ach du
Buildings, which often
Scheiße.
require multiple skills to navigate successfully, and often
Der hat das ja
contain the best
mega
loot,
geil geschnitten,
but are
ne?
also
Das
the
hat
most
bestimmt
dangerous places to
Stunden
enter
gedauert.
due to being almost always guarded by humans. And most importantly, roads, which are the most common death trap for players in the city, and require careful strategy
Das ist
to
die
traverse.
Death Zone.
However, in the city meta, the most important factor
Geht er gleich
by
auch auf
far
die
is
Tiere
the
einzeln ein?
intelligence step.
Weil sonst wird es
Ja,
mir, glaube ich,
This
ein
is
bisschen zu
because the best
anstrengend.
rewards can
Ja,
only
warte
be
ab.
sustainably looted
Tierlist
by
kommt ja
using
erst noch.
careful
Ach ja, hat er ja
strategy
gesagt,
and
ja.
solving.
Die Fähigkeiten kommen jetzt erstmal.
Ja, der
Puzzles,
redet ein bisschen
avoiding
sehr schnell,
traps,
das macht es ein
or
bisschen
stealing loot
anstrengend.
from humans.
Ja,
Without intelligence,
aber gut.
gameplay in the city biome is much
Er wollte es
more
halt auch kurz halten.
Alright, so let's get into the tier list for the city meta. In F tier, we have the Deer Guild, which includes the classic deer build along with its variants like the elk and moose. These builds lack nearly all of the most important traits for a city build. They don't have a high intelligence
Ja.
stat, they can't climb or crawl, and they aren't omnivorous. However, deer players love to loot the gardens that human mains create in cities and suburbs, and because of that, are extremely common at the
Blümchen
edges of city biomes. However, they struggle to survive further in, because of one of the main obstacles, roads.
Ja.
Because they have no way to climb or fly, they often have to cross roads.
Ich habe mal einen Reh bei uns an der Straße morgens gesehen. Ich dachte, ich bin noch zu müde.
However, even at the edge of cities, when things get crowded, deer don't do well.
Ist auch sofort weggelaufen.
Chronic wasting disease. Although this is mostly due to a random bug in the deer's code, which I hope gets patched out soon. Next on the tier list, we have the first of many birds. Because of their high average intelligence, birds tend to do quite well in the city meta. This includes even the weakest bird builds out there, like the pigeon, which is on the low end of average in terms of the bird's stats.
Ja gut, die machen nicht viel, außer rumfliegen und essen.
Still puts you well above the average overall.
Ja, die haben auch wenig HP.
Pigeons are great at making use
ja, das ist nicht gut.
Mostly for superior
Diese Glass-Cannon-Builds.
and for recognizing the human mains that tend to host drop parties most frequently. While their street smarts are solid, their combat potential leaves a lot to be desired. Pigeons get bodied by basically every other build in the city meta, and for that, they're stuck in D tier. The next build on the list is another bird, one that's opted for a tank-type build, the goose. Now, I've actually got a full
Gänse können böse sein,
so I won't spend too much time discussing them here.
Oh
These
ja,
are actually one of the few builds in the game that had a nearly dead player base, with numbers dwindling before they started joining city servers. However, with the introduction of city parks, geese have risen to prominence more so than ever before. With that said, as intimidating as they can be, they're easily defeated as long as your build can resist their intimidation abilities.
Mit den breiten Flügeln, da wirst du halt erstmal verunsichert, ne? Also
so ein Schnabel kann auch mal wehtun.
Oh ja.
In C tier, we have a build that's had a bit of breakout success in the city meta, the coyote. Coyotes hold a low tier spot in the prairie and forest meta, mainly due to their inability to deal adequate damage to other players.
Da muss ich ja echt richtig Gedanken gemacht haben. Mega geil.
Coyote's excellent intelligence stat allows it to do quite well here. And in the city, potential targets for the coyotes are much less impressive combat.
Oh ja,
gut
gemacht, gut gemacht.
Er kann halt nicht fliegen, ne?
Ja, das ist halt das Demerit an der Stelle, was er hat.
This can work against the coyote sometimes, though, as human players don't take kindly to coyotes attacking their vulnerable players in their party. Still, C tier is a higher placing than I gave to coyotes on the canine tier list I made, meaning I think the coyote build is more effective in the city than anywhere else.
Definitiv.
Next we have the gull, a build very similar in playstyle to the pigeon, but with a bit of added bulk, enabling it to survive attacks that mean over for players in the lower weight class. Although they're excellent scavengers, because this build was initially developed by carnivore players, its combat abilities are strong enough to enable it to take down.
Alter, das wusste ich gar nicht, dass sie das können.
This build does best in coastal cities, but really is solid in just about any city, and ranks at high C tier. In B tier, we have the feral hog, another build which had a bit of breakout success in recent times.
Keiler können
Feral
nicht böse
hogs
sein.
are the bulkiest build on this list, and because of their
das kann
bulk,
richtig
essentially
wehtun.
no unfavorable matchups against the other non-human city builds. They are easily the safest build to play when it comes to having to fear combat from other players.
Ich habe einmal ein Auto gesehen, nachdem so ein Keiler mal gegengestoßen ist. Da war eine ganz schöne Beute, das ist echt krass. Also, die Tür war am Arsch, auf jeden Fall.
Because of this, I would expect the human player base to start calling for bans and react quite aggressively when a hog's presence is discovered. Still, with one of the highest intelligence stats in the game, the hog build can quickly learn to navigate cities. Perhaps their worst detriment is that they require a lot of loot to sustain, and since they can't climb, they may run out of all available loot rather quickly. Last in B tier, we have the squirrel. Squirrels have the highest arboreal mobility of any build in the game.
Ja gut, die sind sauschnell, ne?
Sind sauschnell, können sich gut verstecken und die bauen sich Lager.
Their thick fur does mean they can survive more damage than your average rodent build.
Muss sie
Generally,
halt
they don't
erstmal
need to
erwischen.
worry about this though, as their agility should be more than enough to allow them to escape most
Boah,
dangerous
geil.
situations,
Guck dir
and
das
enough
an.
to allow them to
Heftig.
bypass most obstacles and claim the best loot available. While there's certainly no
Shit.
powerhouse, there's no question that when it comes to traversing the urban biome, squirrels are near unparalleled. One of the biggest risks to squirrel mains is that their regenerative tooth ability forces them to use them every so often to damage structures, and gnawing on the wrong thing can mean game over for an inexperienced player. First in A tier, we have the raccoon. I see the raccoon build as sort of a direct upgrade to the coyote.
Ja, dann ist bestimmt der Rabe auf Platz A, oder?
Rabe hätte ich jetzt auch gesagt,
War
oder
das
so
so ziemlich
oder Stadtfalke oder sowas.
Ja, aber Raccoons sind auch krass. Oder Ratten vielleicht. Ratten oder, was hatte ich eben gesagt? Wortfindungsschwierigkeiten wegen Migräne. Raben und Ratten schätze ich in A.
Hätte ich auch mal gesagt.
Oder ganz oben.
One thing to note is that raccoons are a high skill ceiling build with a low skill floor.
Da überlebt das, krass.
Ja, weil Ratten überleben ja wirklich alles. Also. Krass.
On a similar vein to the raccoon, next in A tier we have the monkey, another highly adaptable and versatile build, which combines the intelligence of the hog with the mobility of a squirrel to create a build perfectly capable of mastering everything about city gameplay.
Die sind so niedlich, aber ich kann mir auch vorstellen, also wenn du mal so einen begegnest, erstmal bedrohlich und wie schnell die sind, die an der Stelle.
Low defenses and high food cost are also somewhat mitigated by cities, since high-value loot is abundant and the predators that could take advantage of the monkey's low defensive stats have a tough time traversing cities uncontested. However, it's important to note that due to a monkey's size, the climbing obstacles in cities aren't always as safe as they seem, so knowledge of how to traverse them is paramount. In top tier, we have two builds which really have total command of cities, as well as nigh untouchability from the hazards common in cities. The first is the Corvid build, including crows, ravens, and magpies. These builds, which are tied with parrots for the highest intelligence
weil die halt so schlau sind. Ich habe mal gesehen, dass die Nüsse auf die Straße legen, damit da Autos rüberfahren, um die zu öffnen. Also,
genau, damit die aufgeknackt werden. Ja, jetzt habe ich auch
Gesichter merken, die sind krass.
In fact, corvids play very similar to monkeys in basically every way except that corvids have the flight ability. They too can interface with humans with ease, but unlike monkeys, corvids don't have to worry about obstacles like roads or power lines. In fact, corvids use these to their advantage. Roads in particular can be used to access loot that would be otherwise inaccessible to a build with such a low power stack. Whether that be loot from tough tree nuts or from players who didn't have the skills necessary to traverse.
Das machen die auch mit Tieren? Wie geil ist das denn?
This was probably fairly predictable, but there's no question that the best city build in the game is the rat.
Ja, war erwartbar tatsächlich, weil die einfach, die können nicht sterben. Ratten sind krass. Ja, Spawn Rates.
Die Spawn Rates, ja.
Ja gut, das ist...
Ich glaube, so blöd sind die an der Stelle auch nicht.
Nee, die sind auch schlau.
But more importantly, rats are smart enough to learn to avoid traps that humans deliberately set.
Ja, das ist deren Schwäche.
Intelligence really is everything when it comes to the city meta. Far more important than stats that are normally must-haves, like power and HP. If you're interested in learning more about intelligent animals, I recommend you check out Super Smart Animals, a documentary about the heights of animal intelligence on CuriosityStream. It's an awesome two-part series that covers both practical and strategic intelligence and also goes into the social component of intelligence.
Da können wir auch mal irgendwann drauf reagieren.
Das ist ja cool.
So if you want to try to predict
Der kann Lasergeräusche
social
nachmachen.
and usocial builds, this is going to be one of your best resources. CuriosityStream is the best place on the internet.
Ja, die Werbung, auf die müssen wir jetzt nicht reagieren, ne?
Nee, da müssen wir jetzt nicht reagieren.
Willst du anfangen? Soll ich anfangen?
Sehr cool strukturiertes Video erstmal.
Definitiv.
Also sehr cool vorbereitet und so ein bisschen Gamer-Jargon mit Builds und hier, welche Stats wichtig sind zum Überleben und so. Sehr cool.
Ja,
nee, sehr cool gemacht.
Das ist eins der besten YouTube-Videos, die ich in den letzten 2-3 Wochen gesehen habe. Also mega unterhaltsam, mega witzig, auch informativ. Gut, dass jetzt Ratten und Krähen auf 1 waren oder Raben, das hätte ich fast vermutet.
Ja.
Wir haben so ein bisschen Hunde und Katzen gefehlt, aber gut, Hunde sind ja mehr oder weniger mit Menschen immer, von daher.
Ich denke, die meinen an der Stelle hauptsächlich so Wildtiere.
Ja, Wildkatzen haben mir gefehlt. Aber die hätte ich, glaube ich, so C oder B eingerankt. Nee,
jetzt auch gesagt.
Gutes Video. Mega gut.
Ja, cooles Video.
Viel mehr kann ich gerade eigentlich nicht dazu sagen.
Echt cool strukturiert an der Stelle. Ich finde auch eigentlich gar nicht so schlecht, dass er mal kurz darauf eingegangen ist, von wegen so, was sind denn Fähigkeiten, die in der Stadt so wichtig sind zum Überleben. Ja. Wo er dann auf das Fliegen eingegangen ist und das Klettern und sowas. Ja, hat er cool gemacht. Ja. Grundsätzlich wäre jetzt neugierig, was er noch so gemacht hat, aber der hat ja schon mal genannt, er hat anscheinend auch nochmal so ein Hunde, so Runterbrech-Tierlist gemacht an der Stelle. Wäre jetzt auch neugierig an der Stelle, was es damit auf sich hat.
Ja, können wir uns ja irgendwann auch mal angucken.
Ja, definitiv.
War sehr geil, muss ich sagen. Wirklich sehr, sehr, sehr gut. Höchstes Niveau. Wie unser Kanal nicht. In dem Sinne, ciao.
Wiedersehen. Ciao, ciao.